Three German shepherds was crying from a hollow. Tree trunk, what baby did, next left. Everyone in tears. What you're about to hear will change everything you thought you knew about the connection between children and animals. If you think you've heard it all, prepare yourself for something that will leave you questioning the very nature of innocence and courage. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and let us know where you're watching from in the comments below. The crying started at 3:47 a.m. Marcus Thompson shot up in his small bed, his dinosaur pajamas damp with sweat. The digital clock's red glow painted shadows across his room in the old farmhouse his parents had bought just 3 weeks ago. Something had pulled him from sleep. Not a nightmare, not thunder, but a sound so desperate it made his chest hurt. "Hello?" Marcus whispered into the darkness. The crying came again. Not human, not exactly animal either. Something in between that made his 5-year-old heart race faster than when he'd gotten lost at the grocery store last month. His bare feet touched the cold wooden floor. The farmhouse was different from their city apartment, bigger, older, full of sounds that didn't make sense yet. Dad said it would feel like home soon. Mom said the quiet would help them all heal after Dad's last deployment. But this sound wasn't quiet. This sound was breaking something inside Marcus's chest. He padded to his window, pressing his small nose against the cold glass. Outside, the forest stretched black and endless behind their property. The crying was coming from there, from deep in those trees where Mom said he must never go alone. "Mommy?" Marcus pushed open his parents' bedroom door. Sarah Thompson stirred, her blonde hair messy against the pillow. "Baby, what's wrong?" "There's crying in the forest." She pulled him close, her arms warm and safe. "It's just the wind through the trees, sweetheart. Old forests make strange sounds." "No, Mommy." "Something's hurt. Something needs help." David Thompson sat up, his military training making him instantly alert even from deep sleep. "What kind of crying, buddy?" Marcus pressed his hands against his ears, trying to show them. "Like when Bailey got stuck under the porch at our old house. But sadder, much sadder." His parents exchanged that look, the one that meant they thought he was imagining things again. Marcus saw that look a lot. Like when he told them Mrs. Chen from their old building was sick before she went to the hospital. Or when he knew Dad's friend Jake was sad, even though Jake was laughing. Or when he found that injured sparrow behind the school and held it until it stopped being afraid. "Come on," David said, lifting Marcus into his strong arms. "Let's get you back to bed. I'll check the forest edge in the morning, okay?" But Marcus knew morning would be too late. He could feel it in that place behind his ribs where he felt things other people didn't feel. The crying was getting weaker. Whatever was making that sound was running out of time. Back in his bed, Marcus lay still until his parents' door clicked shut. Then he sat up again, listening. The crying drifted through his window, pulling at him like invisible string. He pressed his palm against the wall, the way he used to press it against Bailey's fur when the old dog was scared of thunderstorms. "I hear you," he whispered. "I'll find you. I promise." The next morning came gray and drizzling. Marcus picked at his scrambled eggs while his parents discussed the new routine. Sarah's remote marketing job, David's therapy appointments at the VA, the list of house repairs that seemed to grow longer every day. "Can we explore the forest today?" Marcus asked. "Maybe later, sweetheart," Sarah said, not looking up from her laptop. "I have 3 client calls this morning, and Dad's got his appointment in town." Marcus nodded, but inside his chest, the pulling feeling grew stronger. During breakfast, during his mother's first call, during the cartoons she put on to keep him occupied, the crying never stopped. Only he could hear it, like a radio station only his heart could tune into. At 2 p.m., while Sarah was deep in her second video call and David was still at the VA, Marcus made his decision. He pulled on his red rain boots, the ones with the frog eyes on the toes. He filled his dinosaur backpack with things that might help: a water bottle, the crackers from lunch, the small flashlight Dad had given him, and Mr. Spots, his stuffed Dalmatian, who was good at making scared things feel better. The back door opened without a sound. Marcus had learned which boards creaked and which stayed quiet. The forest waited, dark and wet and full of secrets. His boots squelched in the mud as he followed the invisible string in his chest. The crying grew louder with each step, though louder wasn't the right word. Clearer, maybe. like tuning in that radio station better and better. The trees grew thicker, older. Their branches twisted together overhead until the gray afternoon looked like evening. Marcus should have been scared. Mom always said he was too brave for his own good, too willing to trust, too quick to help. But the crying pulled him forward, and he couldn't leave something hurt and alone. Not when he was the only one who could hear it. 20 minutes into the forest, though it felt like hours, Marcus found it. The oak tree was massive, older than the farmhouse, older than anything Marcus had ever seen. Its trunk was wider than Dad's pickup truck, and halfway up, a dark hollow opened like a mouth frozen in a scream. The crying came from inside. Marcus dropped his backpack and ran to the tree. The hollow started about 3 feet off the ground, and even on his tiptoes, he could barely see inside. But the sound, the sound broke his heart into smaller and smaller pieces. "Hello?" he called into the darkness. "Are you hurt?" The crying stopped for a moment, then returned with desperate intensity. And now Marcus could hear what it really was. Not one voice, but three. 3 different cries wound together into one rope of sadness. He dragged a fallen branch to the tree, using it as a step. Now he could see into the hollow, and what he saw made him gasp. 3 puppies huddled at the bottom of a deep cavity inside the tree. German shepherds, though Marcus didn't know the breed name. He just saw fur matted with mud, eyes barely open, bodies trembling against each other for warmth. They were trapped in a natural pit inside the tree, the walls too steep and smooth for their small paws to climb. "Oh no," Marcus breathed. "How long have you been down there?" The puppies cried harder at the sound of his voice, their tiny paws scrabbling uselessly against the wooden walls. Marcus could see they were weak, their movements sluggish. There were scratch marks all around the inside of the hollow. They'd been trying to escape for a long time. Marcus reached down, but the hollow was too deep. His small arm couldn't reach even halfway to the puppies. He tried climbing into the opening, but his body was too big to fit through, and the drop inside was too far. If he fell in, he'd be trapped too. "Don't worry," he told them, his voice shaking. "I'm going to get help. I'm going to save you." He jumped down from his branch and ran, his boots slipping in the mud. Tree branches caught his jacket, scratched his face, but he didn't stop. The farmhouse appeared through the trees, and he burst through the back door. "Mommy! Mommy, there's puppies!" Sarah looked up from her laptop, irritation flashing across her face at the interruption. Then she saw him, covered in mud, face scratched, eyes wild with urgency. "Marcus? What happened? Where were you?" "The forest. There's puppies stuck in a tree. They're crying, they're trapped, they need help now." Sarah closed her laptop, kneeling to his level. "Honey, slow down." "What puppies?" "3 puppies in the hollow tree. They can't get out. They're going to die." Sarah's expression shifted to the look again, the one that said she didn't believe him. "Marcus, there aren't any puppies in the forest. Maybe you saw some squirrels, or heard birds." "No." Marcus stamped his foot, tears streaming down his face. "They're real." "They're stuck. Why won't you believe me?" Okay. Sarah pulled him into a hug. "When Dad gets home, we'll go look together." "That's too late." "They're already so weak." But Sarah was already reaching for her phone, texting David about Marcus's imagination acting up again. Marcus saw the words over her shoulder and felt something break inside him. They didn't believe him, just like they didn't believe him about the other things he knew, the other things he felt. He pulled away from his mother's arms and ran to his room, slamming the door. But he didn't stay there. Instead, he climbed out his window, a trick he'd learned at the old apartment when he wanted to sit on the fire escape and watch the pigeons. He grabbed his backpack again and headed back to the forest. This time, he brought more supplies from the garage, a rope Dad used for camping, a bucket, and a small gardening shovel. The puppies were still crying when he reached the tree, though quieter now. One of them had stopped moving as much as the others. "I'm back," Marcus called down to them. "I brought help." He tried lowering the bucket on the rope, thinking maybe the puppies could climb in, but they were too weak, too small, too scared. The bucket came up empty again and again. Marcus was sobbing now, his small hands bloody from the rope, when he heard footsteps behind him. "My goodness, child, what are you doing out here?" He spun around to find an elderly woman with silver hair and kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a purple raincoat and carried a walking stick carved with birds. Grandma Ellen! Marcus ran to her, throwing his arms around her waist. You came! Ellen Thompson had arrived for her surprise visit an hour ago, finding her daughter-in-law frantic and her son just returning from the VA. When they'd explained about Marcus's disappearance and his story about puppies, she'd felt something stir in her chest, a familiar feeling she hadn't experienced in decades. Show me, she said simply. Marcus led her to the tree, and Ellen peered into the hollow. Her expression changed immediately. Dear God, she whispered, you were right. She pulled out her phone, but there was no signal this deep in the forest. Marcus, how did you know they were here? I heard them crying. Last night and all day today. They're so scared, Grandma, and hungry, and one of them is getting really sick. Ellen studied her grandson's face, so earnest, so determined, so much like another little boy she'd known long ago. Your great-grandfather could hear things like this too, she said softly. Things other people couldn't hear. Marcus's eyes widened. Really? Really? Now, let's figure out how to save these babies. Ellen examined the hollow more carefully, using Marcus's flashlight to see better. The opening's too small for me, too deep for our arms. We need... She stopped, her light catching something else. Marcus, there's something moving over there. They crept toward a cluster of bushes 20 feet from the tree. There, hidden in the undergrowth, lay a German shepherd, full-grown, female, and badly injured. Her back leg was twisted at an unnatural angle, and cuts covered her body. But her eyes were fixed on the tree, and when she saw Marcus approaching, she whined. It's their mama, Marcus breathed. She's hurt too. The dog growled weakly as they got closer, but Marcus did something that made Ellen's breath catch. He sat down in the mud, making himself small, and held out his hand palm down. Then he started humming, a low, wordless tune that seemed to come from somewhere deep inside him. The mother dog's growling stopped. Her ears, which had been flat against her head, slowly lifted. She sniffed the air, then began pulling herself toward Marcus with her front legs, her injured back leg dragging uselessly. Careful, Marcus, Ellen warned, but she could see something happening that defied explanation. The dog reached Marcus and, instead of attacking, pressed her head against his small chest and began to cry, a sound so human it made Ellen's eyes fill with tears. She's been trying to save them, Marcus said, his hands gentle on the dog's matted fur. She's been trying for days, but she's too hurt. That's why she's been crying for help. She knew someone would hear. Ellen knelt beside them, her mind racing. The dog wore a collar, leather, well-made, with a tag. She squinted at it in the dim forest light. Honor, she read. Her name is Honor. And there's a phone number. She pulled out her phone again. Still no signal. We need to get help, but I can't leave you here alone. I won't leave them, Marcus said firmly. Honor needs me to stay. She's been alone and scared for too long. Ellen made a decision that went against every responsible adult instinct she had. Then we both stay. But first, let me try something. She pulled out her phone and climbed onto a large rock nearby, holding the device high. One bar appeared, flickered, disappeared. She climbed higher, balancing precariously. 2 bars. She dialed quickly. Not 911. That would take too long to explain. Instead, she called the one person she knew would come immediately without questions. Tom, it's Ellen Thompson. I need you at the old oak forest behind the Morrison farmhouse. Bring your rescue equipment, the military-grade stuff. Yes, now. I'll explain when you get here. And Tom, bring medical supplies, for dogs. Tom Bradley lived 3 properties over, a bitter man who'd lost his left leg in Afghanistan, and his will to live shortly after. Ellen had been bringing him casseroles for 6 months, the only neighbor he hadn't run off with his snarling temper. But she'd seen his garage, full of equipment from his military days. Equipment he kept maintained and ready, though for what, she didn't know. While they waited, Marcus did something extraordinary. He managed to coax Honor closer to the tree, despite her injuries. Then, with Ellen's help, they lowered the bucket again. This time, Marcus sang to the puppies, the same wordless humming that had calmed their mother. One puppy, the strongest, managed to grab the bucket's edge with its tiny teeth. That's it, Marcus encouraged. Hold on, brave one. Together, they pulled up the first puppy. It was a female, her fur brown and black despite the mud. The moment she was free, she tried to crawl to her mother, but Honor was too weak to do more than lick her baby's face. "Two more," Marcus said, already lowering the bucket again. The second puppy was harder. It was the weakest one, barely responsive. Marcus had to tie the rope around his waist and lean dangerously far into the hollow, while Ellen held his legs. His small hands finally reached the puppy, lifting it gently into the bucket. When they pulled it up, it wasn't breathing. "No, no, no," Marcus cried, cradling the tiny body. He pressed his ear to its chest, then started rubbing its back the way he'd seen people do on TV. "Please, please wake up." Ellen watched in amazement as her grandson worked with an intensity beyond his years. He breathed tiny puffs of air into the puppy's nose, rubbed its chest, whispered words she couldn't quite hear. And then, impossibly, the puppy coughed. Water and mud came out of its tiny mouth, and it began breathing in ragged, painful gasps. "There you go," Marcus whispered, tears streaming down his face. "There you go, little fighter." The sound of branches breaking announced Tom's arrival. He emerged from the forest like a bear, his prosthetic leg clicking against roots, his arms full of equipment. His face was set in its usual scowl until he saw the scene before him. A small boy covered in mud holding a barely breathing puppy. An elderly woman supporting him. An injured German shepherd trying to reach her babies. And one more puppy still trapped in the tree. "What in the hell?" He stopped, his expression changing as he took in Honor. That can't be." He dropped his equipment and moved faster than Ellen had ever seen him move, practically falling to his knees beside the injured dog. "Honor? Girl, is that you?" The dog's tail wagged weakly. "You know her?" Ellen asked. Tom's voice was thick with emotion. "She belonged to Martinez, my unit mate. He died 3 months ago, cancer. His family said Honor ran away during the funeral. We searched everywhere. He examined her injuries with practiced hands. Broken leg, infected cuts, severe dehydration. She must have been pregnant when she ran. Gave birth out here alone." His voice cracked. "Martinez would have hated that. He loved this dog more than anything." "There's still one puppy in the tree," Marcus said urgently. "We need to get it out now." Tom looked at the hollow, then at his equipment. He pulled out a collapsible rescue pole with a loop on the end, the kind used to rescue animals from storm drains. "Stand back, kid." But as Tom worked to rescue the last puppy, Marcus noticed something else. Honor had stopped moving. Her breathing was becoming shallow, labored. "Grandma," he whispered, fear making his voice small. Ellen checked the dog quickly. "She's going into shock." The effort of seeing her puppies, the relief, it's too much for her injured body. Tom pulled the last puppy from the tree, another female, this one with distinctive black markings around her eyes like a mask. But his triumph was short-lived as he saw Honor's condition. "No," he said firmly, as if he could order death to stand down like a soldier. "Not happening. Not again." He pulled out his phone, barking orders to someone on the other end. "I need veterinary backup at these coordinates now. Yes, it's an emergency. 3 puppies and an adult female German shepherd. Critical condition. I don't care if Dr. Reeves is in surgery. Get someone here now." Then he turned to Marcus. "Kid, I need you to keep her conscious. Talk to her, sing to her, whatever you've been doing that makes her respond to you. Can you do that?" Marcus nodded, moving to Honor's head. He placed his small hands on her face, looking directly into her eyes. "Honor, you have to stay. Your babies need you. They're all safe now, all 3 of them. But they need their mama. Please stay." What happened next would be debated in the town for years. Some said it was coincidence. Some said it was the power of a child's pure heart. But everyone who was there agreed on the facts. Honor's breathing steadied. Her eyes, which had been glazing over, focused on Marcus's face, and she held on. Dr. Jennifer Reeves arrived 15 minutes later, having broken several traffic laws. She was a young veterinarian who'd just opened her practice in town, eager but inexperienced with trauma this severe. But with Tom's military medical knowledge and Marcus's inexplicable ability to keep the dogs calm, they managed to stabilize Honor and all 3 puppies. "We need to get them to my clinic immediately," Dr. Reeves said. "The puppies are severely dehydrated and malnourished. The mother has multiple infections and that leg needs surgery. I don't know how they survived this long." "They survived because they had to," Marcus said quietly. They were waiting for someone to hear them. As they prepared to transport the dogs, Ellen noticed something carved into the oak tree, just above the hollow. Initials and a date. RH 1943. Her breath caught in her throat. "Robert Hayes," she whispered. "My father?" Tom looked up from where he was preparing a makeshift stretcher for Honor. "Your father?" Ellen traced the carved letters with trembling fingers. "He disappeared in 1944 during the war, but before that, he trained military dogs. He had a gift. That's what my mother always said. He could understand them in a way that seemed impossible." She looked at Marcus, who was carefully holding the weakest puppy against his chest, sharing his warmth. "He was 5 years old when he first showed the gift. Same age as Marcus." "You're saying this runs in families?" Tom asked, skeptical despite everything he'd witnessed. "I'm saying," Ellen replied slowly, "that sometimes gifts skip generations, and sometimes they appear when they're needed most." The rain had started again, heavier now. They needed to move quickly. Tom carried Honor on the stretcher while Dr. Reeves held the puppies in a special carrier. Marcus walked between them, his small hand resting on Honor's side, maintaining the connection that seemed to be keeping her fighting. As they emerged from the forest, Sarah and David were waiting at the tree line, having been called by Ellen. Sarah ran to Marcus, dropping to her knees in the mud. "Baby, I'm so sorry. I should have believed you. I should have—" "It's okay, Mommy," Marcus said, exhaustion finally showing in his voice. "Sometimes grown-ups forget how to hear things. But the puppies are safe now." David stared at the procession of injured dogs, his military mind trying to process what his son had accomplished. "How did you find them, buddy?" "How did you know?" Marcus looked up at his father, with those earnest eyes that saw too much, felt too much, understood too much for a 5-year-old. "They were crying, Daddy. And when something cries that hard, someone has to listen." The trip to the veterinary clinic became a town event. Word spread quickly. The Thompson boy had found Martinez's missing dog and her puppies, saved them from certain death in a hollow tree. People lined the streets as the makeshift ambulance passed, some saluting Tom and Honor, others simply watching in amazement. At the clinic, Dr. Reeves worked through the night. Tom refused to leave, setting up a military-style watch rotation. Ellen stayed too, holding Marcus when he finally crashed from exhaustion but refused to go home. Sarah and David took turns, bringing coffee and sandwiches, watching their son sleep on the waiting room couch with a devotion that bordered on reverence. "I didn't know," Sarah whispered to Ellen during one of the quiet moments, "about Marcus's gift. I thought it was just an overactive imagination." Ellen patted her daughter-in-law's hand. "We live in a world that tells us to trust only what we can measure and prove. But some things, the most important things, can't be measured. They can only be felt." "Your father had this gift too?" Ellen nodded. "He saved dozens of military dogs during the war," they said. "Could calm the most traumatized animals, help them trust again. The army wanted to study him, figure out how he did it, but he said it wasn't something you could learn from a book. It was something you had to feel with your whole heart." She pulled out her phone, showing Sarah an old photograph she'd digitized years ago. A young man in military uniform knelt beside 3 German shepherds, his hand on one's head, his expression peaceful despite the chaos of war around him. "He looks like Marcus," Sarah breathed. "Same eyes," Ellen agreed. "Eyes that see past the surface to the soul beneath." As dawn broke, Dr. Reeves emerged from surgery, exhausted but smiling. "Honor's going to make it. The leg was badly broken, but we've set it. The infections are responding to antibiotics, and the puppies, all 3 are stable." The waiting room erupted in quiet celebration. Tom actually smiled, a sight so rare that Ellen took a photo to prove it happened. But it was Marcus's reaction that moved everyone most. He simply nodded, as if he'd known all along they would survive, then asked, "Can I see them?" Dr. Reeves led him to the recovery room. Honor was sedated, her leg in a cast, IV lines providing fluids and medication. The puppies were in an incubator, tiny, oxygen tubes helping them breathe easier. Marcus stood on a step stool to see better, his hands pressed against the glass. "Hi, brave ones," he whispered. "You're safe now. No more dark tree, no more being scared and alone." The weakest puppy, the one that had stopped breathing, lifted its head slightly at the sound of his voice. "That's medically impossible," Dr. Reeves said softly. That puppy shouldn't even be conscious yet." But Tom just shook his head. "After what I've seen today, Doc, I'm done saying anything's impossible." Over the next week, the story spread beyond their small town. Local news picked it up first. 5-year-old boy saves military dog and puppies from hollow tree. But it quickly went national. People were fascinated by the idea of a child who could hear animals in distress, who possessed his great-grandfather's legendary gift. Reporters came to interview Marcus, but he was a reluctant celebrity. He answered their questions simply, honestly, without embellishment. "How did you know the puppies were there?" "I heard them crying." "But your parents couldn't hear them. Sometimes kids hear things grown-ups don't." "Do you think you have a special power?" "No, I think everyone can hear if they really listen. Most people just forget how." The interviews always ended the same way, with Marcus politely asking to go back to the clinic to check on Honor and the puppies. His devotion to them never wavered. Tom Bradley, the bitter veteran who'd sworn off human connection after losing his leg and his purpose, found himself drawn into the recovery process. He came to the clinic every day bringing his military dog training experience. He and Marcus formed an unlikely friendship. The gruff soldier and the gentle boy united in their determination to help Honor heal. "You know," Tom said one afternoon as they sat beside Honor's kennel, "I had a dog in Afghanistan. Sergeant, best explosive detection dog in the unit. He saved my life more times than I can count." Marcus listened quietly, his hand resting on Honor's side through the kennel bars. "The day I lost my leg, Sergeant tried to warn me about the IED. I didn't listen, thought I knew better." Tom's voice was rough with memory. "He died trying to pull me to safety after the explosion. Died because I didn't trust what he was telling me." "He wasn't mad at you," Marcus said suddenly. Tom's head snapped up. "What?" "Sergeant, he wasn't mad that you didn't listen. He was just sad he couldn't save you all the way." Marcus's eyes were distant, unfocused, as if seeing something beyond the room. "He wanted you to know it wasn't your fault." Tom's face crumpled. This hardened soldier who'd faced Taliban fighters without flinching broke down sobbing in front of a 5-year-old boy. Marcus climbed into his lap, small arms wrapping around the man's shaking shoulders. "It's okay to cry," Marcus said. "Sergeant says tears wash the hurt away, so love can grow again." Ellen, watching from the doorway, felt her own tears fall. Whatever gift her father had passed down to Marcus, it went beyond simply hearing animals. It was about healing, both the creatures and the humans who loved them. As Honor recovered, a legal question arose. Who would take custody of her and the puppies? Martinez's family had moved away and couldn't take them. The military suggested they could be retrained as service dogs, but Marcus had other ideas. "They need to stay together," he announced at a town meeting called to discuss the matter. "Honor needs to raise her babies, and they need their mama. That's how they heal all the way, together." "But who would take all 4 dogs?" the mayor asked. Marcus looked at Tom. "Mister, Tom has a big house and a big yard, and he's lonely. Honor could help him like he's helping her." Tom shifted uncomfortably under everyone's gaze. "I'm not exactly dog parent material, kid." "Yes, you are," Marcus said with the confidence only a 5-year-old could muster. "You just forgot." "But Honor will help you remember." The room was silent. Then Tom cleared his throat. I mean, Martinez would want Honor taken care of. And I do have the space. And the training experience. And you need them as much as they need you," Marcus added quietly. Tom met the boy's eyes, seeing something there that made him nod slowly. Yeah, I do." The decision was made. Tom would take Honor and the puppies once they were fully recovered. But that was still weeks away. In the meantime, the daily visits continued, and something beautiful began to happen. Other veterans started coming to the clinic. Word had spread through the VA about the boy who could somehow understand what animals and people needed to hear. They came skeptically at first, but when they saw Marcus with the dogs, when they felt the strange peace that seemed to radiate from him, they stayed. One afternoon, a veteran named Carlos arrived with his service dog, Rex, who'd become increasingly anxious and aggressive since Carlos's last deployment. The VA trainers were recommending retirement, which would leave Carlos without his emotional support. "Can you help?" Carlos asked Marcus desperately. Marcus sat on the floor with Rex, who was tense and trembling. For a long moment, boy and dog just looked at each other. Then Marcus said, "He's not mad. He's scared. He thinks the loud noises are coming back. He's trying to protect you from something that isn't here anymore." Carlos's breath hitched. "The mortar attacks. In Iraq. Rex was with me when our base got hit." Marcus nodded, his small hand gentle on Rex's head. "He needs to know the war is over, that you're both safe now. He's been standing guard for 3 years, and he's so tired." Following Marcus's guidance, Carlos spent the next hour talking to Rex. Really talking, not commands, but conversation. Telling him about their new life, about safety, about how the war was over for both of them. And slowly, miraculously, Rex began to relax. For the first time in months, the dog lay down, truly rested, his head in Carlos's lap. "How?" Carlos asked Marcus through tears. Marcus shrugged. "Sometimes we forget to tell the important stuff because we think they already know. But sometimes they need to hear it, just like we do." Dr. Reeves, who'd been observing these interactions with growing amazement, began documenting everything, not for fame or scientific glory, but because she recognized she was witnessing something extraordinary, a gift that could revolutionize how we understand the connection between humans and animals. 3 weeks after the rescue, Honor took her first steps on her healing leg. Marcus was there, of course, encouraging her with that same wordless humming that had first calmed her in the forest. The puppies, now with their eyes fully open and personalities emerging, tumbled around their mother's feet. Tom had named them, or rather, Marcus had told him their names. The female with the brown and black fur was Hope, because she never gave up. The one who'd stopped breathing was Courage, because he fought his way back. And the one with the mask markings was Faith, because she believed they'd be saved. "Martinez would have loved those names," Tom said, his voice thick. As Honor grew stronger, she began displaying behaviors that amazed everyone. She would alert before Marcus had his occasional nightmares, waking Sarah or David to comfort him. She seemed to know when Tom's phantom pain was bad, lying beside him with her weight against his residual limb in a way that somehow helped. She could sense when any of the clinic's patients, human or animal, needed extra comfort. "She's not just recovering, Doctor," Reeves observed. "She's becoming something more. A healer herself." "That's what happens," Marcus said matter-of-factly. "When you get rescued, you learn how to rescue others." Ellen, documenting everything in a journal she'd started, found herself thinking more and more about her father. She'd discovered his old military records, including commendations for his work with war dogs. One report stood out. "Private Hayes displays an uncanny ability to rehabilitate traumatized dogs. His methods are unconventional and cannot be replicated by other handlers, but his success rate is unprecedented. Dogs that other trainers have given up on respond to Private Hayes within hours. When asked about his technique, he claims he simply listens with his heart instead of his ears." The same words Marcus had used. Ellen also found something else in her father's records, a note about a hollow oak tree on the property that would later become the Morrison farmhouse. Robert Hayes had written about saving a litter of abandoned puppies from that same tree in 1943, puppies that grew up to become military dogs who saved countless lives in the war. The parallel was too extraordinary to be coincidence. The discovery of her father's records changed everything for Ellen. She sat at her kitchen table that evening, spreading out the yellowed papers, while Marcus played with Honor's puppies on the living room floor. Each document revealed another piece of a puzzle she'd never known existed. "Listen to this," she told Sarah and David, who'd come for dinner. September 15th, 1943, Private Robert Hayes retrieved 3 German Shepherd puppies from a hollow tree during a training exercise. The puppies were near death from exposure. Private Hayes spent 72 hours straight nursing them back to health, refusing to leave their side. All 3 puppies survived and were later trained as military dogs. They went on to save an estimated 43 soldiers' lives during the war. David leaned forward, his military background making him appreciate the significance. 43 lives from 3 puppies that should have died. "There's more," Ellen continued, her voice trembling. "The mother dog was found nearby, injured by what appeared to be a bear trap. Private Hayes treated her injuries using field medical supplies. She recovered and became his personal companion until..." She paused, swallowing hard. Until he disappeared in November 1944. Disappeared? Sarah asked. Ellen nodded. His unit was overrun during the Battle of Hürtgen Forest. He was listed as missing in action, presumed dead, but they never found his body. And according to this report, his dog, a German shepherd named Guardian, disappeared the same day. From the living room, Marcus's voice drifted to them. He was talking to the puppies, telling them a story about a brave soldier and his dog who saved other dogs. The adults exchanged glances. They hadn't discussed any of this where Marcus could hear. "How does he know?" David whispered. Ellen stood and walked to the doorway, watching her grandson. Marcus sat in a circle of puppies, with Honor's head in his lap. His eyes were closed, but his lips moved constantly, as if having a conversation none of them could hear. "The same way my father knew," she said softly. "The same way he knows which puppy needs extra attention, which veteran needs to hear specific words, which injured animal can be saved. He just knows." That night, Marcus had the dream. He woke not with a scream, but with a gasp, sitting bolt upright in his bed. The room was dark, but he could see everything clearly, not with his eyes, but with that other sense, the one that let him hear what others couldn't. "Grandma," he called, not loudly but with urgency. Ellen, who'd been staying in the guest room, appeared immediately. She found Marcus standing by his window, looking out at the forest. "What is it, sweetheart?" "There's another one," Marcus said, his small hand pressed against the glass. "Another dog. But this one's different. This one's been waiting a really long time." Ellen's blood chilled. "Where, Marcus?" "In the forest. Deeper than where we found Honor, where the old stones are." Ellen knew exactly what he meant. There was a section of the forest, with old foundation stones, remnants of a building that had burned down decades ago. She'd played there as a child, always feeling watched but never afraid. "We'll look in the morning," she promised, but Marcus shook his head. "No. Tonight. He says it has to be tonight. Tomorrow will be too late." "Who says, Marcus?" "The dog." Marcus turned to look at her, and in the darkness, his eyes seemed to glow with an otherworldly understanding. "The soldier. The one who's been waiting with his dog. Your daddy, Grandma. He says it's time." Ellen's legs nearly gave out. She gripped the doorframe, her heart racing. "That's impossible, Marcus. My father died in 1944. His body did," Marcus said simply. "But love doesn't die. It waits, and sometimes, when someone like me comes along, it can finish what it started." The words were too profound, too knowing for a 5-year-old. But Ellen had learned to stop questioning the impossible when it came to Marcus. She woke Sarah and David, and after a hushed, tense discussion, they decided to investigate. Tom Bradley answered his phone on the second ring, alert despite the late hour. Old military habits died hard. "We need you," Ellen said simply. "Bring your equipment and bring Honor." "It's 2 a.m., Tom grumbled, but he was already getting dressed. "What's going on?" "Marcus says there's another dog, in the old foundation ruins in the deep forest." There was a pause. "Those ruins are dangerous. Half collapsed. No one goes there. We're going. With or without you." "Like hell you are. Give me 10 minutes. They met at the forest edge. Ellen, Marcus, Sarah, David, Tom, with Honor on a leash, and, surprisingly, Dr. Reeves, whom Tom had called. "If there's really an animal in distress, you'll need medical help," she explained, carrying her emergency kit. They entered the forest with flashlights cutting through the darkness. Honor led the way, her recovered legs still slightly stiff but functional. She seemed to know where they were going, pulling Tom forward with unusual urgency. The foundation ruins appeared after 30 minutes of hiking. Stone walls rose from the forest floor like broken teeth, covered in moss and vine. The structure had once been a barn or storage building, built in the 1800s and abandoned long before Ellen was born. Honor began whining, a high, keening sound that raised goosebumps on everyone's arms. She pulled toward a section of collapsed wall where wooden beams had created a small cave-like structure. "There," Marcus pointed. Tom shined his powerful flashlight into the opening. At first they saw nothing but shadows and debris. Then, far back in the makeshift cave, 2 eyes reflected the light. "Jesus," Tom breathed. "There is something in there." It took them an hour to clear enough debris to reach the animal. What they found defied explanation. A German shepherd, ancient beyond measure, fur gray with age, but alive. Impossibly, mysteriously alive. The dog didn't move as they approached, just watched them with eyes that held too much intelligence, too much awareness. Around its neck was a collar so old the leather had nearly rotted away, but the metal tag was still readable. Guardian, Ellen read, her voice breaking. Regiment 28, Handler, Private. R. Hayes. The dog. It couldn't be the same dog. It was impossible. Dogs didn't live 80 years, lifted its head and looked directly at Ellen. Then it did something that made everyone step back in shock. It spoke, not with words, not with barks, but somehow they all heard it in their minds, clear as a bell. I've been waiting. Marcus stepped forward, unafraid. Hi, Guardian. I'm Marcus. I'm Robert's great-grandson. The ancient dog's tail moved slightly, not quite a wag, more an acknowledgement. Marcus knelt beside it, placing his small hands on its gray muzzle. For a long moment, they stayed like that, boy and dog locked in silent communication. Then Marcus gasped, his eyes flying wide. Oh, I understand now. What? Sarah asked, reaching for her son. What do you understand? Marcus turned to them, tears streaming down his face. It's not the same dog. It's all of them. Every dog great-grandpa Robert saved, every dog that saved soldiers because of him, a piece of them stayed here, waiting, protecting, making sure someone would always be here to hear when dogs needed help. Tom, the skeptic, the soldier who believed only in what he could see and touch, found himself on his knees. That's why Honor came here, why she gave birth in that specific tree. She was called here, the ancient dog, Guardian, or the echo of Guardian, or whatever impossible thing it was, struggled to stand. Dr. Reeves moved to help, but the dog managed on its own, moving with painful slowness toward Honor. The two German shepherds touched noses, and something passed between them, a light, a feeling, a transfer of something beyond understanding. Honor's whole body shuddered, and when she looked up, her eyes were different, older, wiser, more aware. The gift passes on, Marcus said quietly. From Guardian to Honor, from great-grandpa Robert to me. That's how it works. That's how there's always someone to hear when they cry for help. Guardian collapsed then, its ancient body finally giving in to time. But there was peace in its eyes as Dr. Reeves checked for vitals. He's going, she said softly. Marcus sat beside the dying dog, one hand on Guardian, one on Honor. It's okay, he whispered. You did your job. You waited so long, and you did so good. Robert says thank you. He says you were the best dog ever, and now you can rest. Guardian's tail moved once more, then stilled. The ancient dog drew one last breath and was gone, but in that moment, something extraordinary happened. Honor howled, a sound that seemed to echo through time itself. And from the forest, answering howls came, not from living dogs, but from something else. The memory of dogs, perhaps. The gratitude of all those saved. All those who saved others. We need to bury him, Ellen said through her tears. Here, where he waited. They worked through the dawn, using Tom's entrenching tool to dig a grave beside the old foundation. As they lowered Guardian's body into the earth, Marcus began to sing, that same wordless humming that calmed frightened animals. But this time, it sounded like a military funeral hymn, ancient and honorable. When they finished, the sun was rising, painting the forest gold, and there, carved into one of the foundation stones they had uncovered, were words none of them had noticed before. Here waits love that never dies. Here begins help that never ends. R. H. 1944. He knew, Ellen whispered. My father knew someone would come. Someone like Marcus. As they walked back through the forest, Honor stayed close to Marcus, and something had changed about her. She moved differently, more purposefully. Her eyes tracked things others couldn't see, and when they passed the hollow oak where her puppies had been trapped, she stopped and howled once, a sound of triumph, of completion, of a circle closed and a new one beginning. The story should have ended there. A mysterious night, an impossible discovery, a family legend confirmed. But Marcus's gift and Honor's transformation had only just begun to reveal their true purpose. 3 days after Guardian's burial, the calls started coming. The first was from the county sheriff. "We've got a situation," Sheriff Coleman explained to David. "A kid's gone missing in the Riverside area. Been gone 18 hours. Search teams haven't found anything. Someone mentioned your boy and what happened with those puppies." I know it sounds crazy, but David looked at Marcus, who was already putting on his shoes. "We'll be right there." The search center was chaos. Maps, volunteers, worried parents barely holding themselves together. 9-year-old Amy Chen had vanished while playing in her backyard, which backed up to dense woodland. Marcus walked through the crowd holding Honor's leash, both of them focused and calm. When he reached Amy's parents, he stopped. "Can I hold something that smells like her?" he asked quietly. Amy's mother, desperate enough to try anything, handed him a pink sweater. Marcus held it to Honor's nose, but also pressed it against his own chest, closing his eyes. "She's not lost," he said after a moment. "She's hiding. Someone scared her. Not a bad person, but someone who yelled. She ran, and now she's afraid to come back because she thinks she'll be in trouble." That was me," Amy's father admitted, his voice breaking. "I yelled at her for breaking her mother's vase." "Oh God, this is my fault." Marcus shook his head. "She's okay. She's in a place that feels safe, somewhere up high where she can see but not be seen." He turned to Honor. "Can you find her?" Honor took off, not running, but moving with determined purpose. The search team followed, struggling to keep up as the dog led them. Deeper into the woods, then up a steep hill. At the top was an old hunting blind, a wooden platform built in a tree. And there was Amy, curled in a ball, cold and scared, but unharmed. "Amy," her mother sobbed, climbing up to retrieve her daughter. "Baby, why didn't you answer when we called?" "I thought you were mad," Amy whispered. "I thought if I stayed away long enough, you'd stop being mad." Marcus climbed up too, Honor somehow managing the ladder, despite it not being meant for dogs. "Your parents weren't mad," he told Amy gently. "They were scared. There's a difference. Mad goes away. Love doesn't." Amy looked at this strange boy with his unusual dog and somehow believed him. She let her parents carry her down, clinging to them as they cried, and promised never to yell about broken things again. Sheriff Coleman watched it all with disbelief. "How did you know?" Marcus shrugged. "I listened. Not to words, but to feelings." Amy's feelings were still in her sweater, and Honor could follow them like footprints. Word of the successful rescue spread immediately. Within days, requests came from all over the state. Missing children, lost hikers, confused elderly people who'd wandered off. Marcus couldn't help them all, but with his parents' careful management, he took on cases where traditional search methods had failed. Each time, the process was the same. Marcus would hold something belonging to the missing person. Honor would somehow understand not just the scent, but the emotional trail. And together, they would find what others couldn't. But it wasn't just missing people. Honor's puppies, now 2 months old and thriving in Tom's care, began showing their own unique abilities. Hope, the first puppy they had rescued, could sense illness. During a visit to the clinic, she kept pawing at a man's leg, whining insistently. Dr. Reeves convinced him to get it checked, and doctors found a blood clot that could have killed him. Courage, who'd stopped breathing and been revived, seemed to know when other animals were giving up. He would lie beside them, sharing his warmth and somehow his will to live. Dr. Reeves started bringing him to her most critical cases, and the recovery rate improved dramatically. Faith, with her mask markings, had an uncanny ability to detect lies. During a visit to the sheriff's station, she growled at a man reporting his car stolen. Further investigation revealed he'd sold it for drug money and was trying to commit insurance fraud. "It's like each puppy inherited a different aspect of the gift, Doctor," Reeves observed, documenting everything meticulously. "They're not just dogs anymore. They're something new." Tom, who'd gone from bitter recluse to the town's unofficial dog training expert, had his own theory. Maybe this is evolution. Maybe this is how species adapt, not over millions of years, but in moments of extreme need, extreme love. 1 month after Guardian's burial, a man in an expensive suit showed up at the Thompson farmhouse. He introduced himself as Dr. Mitchell Crawford from the Institute for Human-Animal Bond Studies. "I've been following your son's cases," he told Sarah and David. "What he's doing should be impossible. I'd like to study him, understand the mechanism behind his abilities." "He's not a lab rat," David said firmly. "Of course not. Doctor, Crawford assured them. But think of how many people could be helped if we could understand and replicate his gift. Missing children found, disaster victims located, even early disease detection. The applications are limitless. Marcus, who'd been listening from the hallway, walked into the room with Honor beside him. "You can't replicate it," he said simply. Dr. Crawford knelt to the boy's level. "How do you know that, Marcus?" "Because it's not something in my brain or my blood. It's something in my heart, and hearts can't be copied. They can only be opened." The scientist started to argue, then stopped. Looking into Marcus's eyes, those strange, knowing eyes, he found himself reconsidering everything he thought he knew about the world. "Then teach me," he said finally. "Teach me how to open my heart the way you have." Marcus smiled. "First you have to be quiet, really quiet. Not just your voice, but your thoughts. Then you have to listen, not for words, but for feelings. And then, this is the hard part, you have to believe that every living thing has something important to say." Dr. Crawford ended up staying for a week, following Marcus on his rescues, watching him work with Honor and the puppies. He took notes, recorded videos, ran every non-invasive test the parents would allow. And at the end, he had to admit defeat, at least from a traditional scientific standpoint. "There's no biological marker, no brain anomaly, nothing that explains this," he told his colleagues in a video conference. "The boy is completely normal in every measurable way, except he's not. He's extraordinary, and I think maybe that's the point. Maybe some things aren't meant to be measured. They're meant to be felt." The call that changed everything came on a Tuesday afternoon in late autumn. Marcus was playing with Honor's puppies in the backyard when the phone rang. Tom answered it. He'd been visiting more and more often, drawn into the Thompson family orbit by something stronger than loneliness. "It's the FBI," he said, his face pale. "There's been a kidnapping." The details were horrifying. 6-year-old James Morrison had been taken from his school playground in broad daylight. The kidnapper had been caught on camera, but wore a mask. The car had been found abandoned. The FBI had no leads, and time was running out. Statistics showed that after 48 hours, the chances of finding a kidnapped child alive dropped dramatically. "It's been 36 hours, Special Agent Rivera explained when she arrived at the house. "We wouldn't normally involve civilians, but we've heard about your son's abilities. We're desperate." Marcus listened to the agent, then looked at his parents. "I need something of James's, and I need to go to where he was taken." The FBI helicopter landed in the school playground 2 hours later. Marcus stood where James had been taken, holding the boy's backpack. Honor stood beside him, nose in the air, reading scents and signals no human could detect. But this time was different. This time, Marcus couldn't find the trail. "He's hidden," Marcus said, frustration clear in his voice. "Someone's hiding him from me. Someone who knows how to block the feelings." Agent Rivera's expression fell. "So you can't help?" Marcus closed his eyes, pressing the backpack against his chest. Honor whined, pressing against his leg. And then, so faint he almost missed it, Marcus heard something. Not James. James was indeed hidden somehow. But someone else. Another child, frightened and crying. "There's another kid," Marcus said suddenly. "Not James, someone else. A girl. She's been there longer." The FBI agents exchanged shocked looks. There had been another kidnapping 2 weeks ago, a girl named Lisa Park, but they hadn't connected the cases. "Can you find her?" Agent Rivera asked urgently. Marcus nodded. "She's not hidden the same way. She's..." He paused, listening to something only he could hear. "She's in a basement. Concrete. Cold. There's a dripping sound. Water pipe. And she can hear trains. Not close, but every few hours." The FBI mobilized immediately, mapping locations that fit the description. There were dozens of possibilities, but Marcus had more details. "The person who took her brings food twice a day. Fast food, burgers. The smell makes her sick now. And there's a number she keeps seeing, 1847, on something metal." It took them 4 hours to narrow it down, an abandoned building near the old railroad switching station. The address was 1847 Industrial Way. The SWAT team moved in carefully, but they were too late for stealth. The kidnapper, a man named Carl Brennan, who'd lost his own children in a custody battle, heard them coming. He grabbed Lisa and ran to the roof, threatening to jump with her if anyone came closer. "Let me try," Marcus said. "Absolutely not," Agent Rivera said. "We don't put children in danger." But Marcus was already walking forward, Honor beside him. The SWAT team, unsure whether to stop him, hesitated just long enough for him to reach the roof access door. "Mr. Brennan," Marcus called out, "Lisa wants to go home." "You don't know what she wants," Brennan shouted back. "She's happy with me. I take care of her." Marcus stepped onto the roof, hands visible, moving slowly. Honor stayed by his side, calm despite the danger. "She's not happy. She's scared. And you're scared too. You miss your kids." Brennan's grip on Lisa loosened slightly. "How do you— No, you're trying to trick me." "Your daughter's name is Emma," Marcus said, and everyone wondered how he could possibly know that. "Your son is Michael. Emma likes purple. Michael likes dinosaurs. You used to read them stories every night, the same one over and over, the one about the moon." Brennan was crying now. "How do you know that?" "Because the love is still there," Marcus said simply. "It's all around you like a cloud. But it's mixed with hurt and anger and sadness. Lisa can feel it too. It makes her cry because it's not meant for her." He took another step forward. "Your kids still love you, Mr. Brennan, but taking other people's kids won't bring them back. It just makes more hurt." Honor moved then, not toward Brennan, but toward Lisa. The dog sat just out of reach, tail wagging gently. And somehow that simple, non-threatening gesture broke through Brennan's desperation. "I just wanted to be a dad again," he sobbed, releasing Lisa. The girl ran to Marcus, who caught her, while the SWAT team moved in to arrest Brennan. But Marcus wasn't done. As they led Brennan away, Marcus called out, "James is in your brother's cabin, the one by the lake where you went fishing as kids." Brennan stopped staring at the boy. Then he nodded once. The FBI found James Morrison exactly where Marcus said, unharmed but traumatized, in a cabin owned by Brennan's brother, who was out of the country. Both children were reunited with their families, and Marcus's involvement was kept out of the official reports at his parents' insistence. But word spread anyway. It always did. The media attention became overwhelming. News vans parked outside the Thompson farmhouse. Reporters called at all hours. Social media exploded with theories about Marcus. Everything from miracle child to government experiment. "We need to leave," Sarah said one evening, exhausted from fending off another reporter. "This isn't healthy for Marcus." But Marcus, sitting with Honor and her puppies, shook his head. "We can't leave. There's more coming." "More what?" David asked. "More dogs. More people who need help. More gifts waking up." He looked at his parents with those unsettling, knowing eyes. "It's not just me anymore. It's spreading." He was right. Reports started coming in from around the country. Children displaying unusual connections with animals, dogs showing impossible intelligence, healing happening in ways that defied medical explanation. Dr. Crawford, who'd become something of an ally, brought news from his research network. It's happening globally. Not many cases, but they're there. Children who can communicate with animals. Animals who can sense things they shouldn't be able to sense. It's like a new stage of symbiosis between species. Evolution, Tom said quietly. Not the slow kind. The fast kind that happens when the world needs it. Ellen, who'd been recording everything in her journals, had her own theory. Maybe it's not new. Maybe it's old. Maybe we're just remembering something we forgot. My father had it. His father might have had it. How many others throughout history? The revelation came from an unexpected source. Mrs. Chen, Amy's mother, arrived at the house with an old box. "My grandmother left me this," she explained. "I never understood it until now. But after what your son did for Amy, I think you need to see it." Inside were photographs and documents from the 1920s China. They showed a young girl, Mrs. Chen's grandmother, surrounded by animals. The documents, translated into English, described her ability to speak without words to the creatures of the earth. "She saved our village during a famine," Mrs. Chen explained. "She could find water when the wells ran dry, because the animals showed her. She could predict storms days in advance because the birds told her. They called her blessed, or cursed, depending on who you asked. More families came forward with similar stories, ancestors who had the gift, children who showed signs. It wasn't an isolated phenomenon. It was a thread running through human history, surfacing when needed most. Dr. Reeves, who'd been studying Honor's puppies, made a startling discovery. Their brain scans show increased activity in areas associated with empathy and pattern recognition. But more interesting, the humans who work closely with them show similar changes. It's as if the gift is contagious, not like a disease, but like learning. The more time you spend with them, the more you develop the ability yourself. This proved true with Tom, who'd gone from skeptic to believer to practitioner. He could now sense when his veteran friends were struggling with PTSD before they showed symptoms. He knew which dogs at the shelter would match with which people. His connection wasn't as strong as Marcus's, but it was real and growing. It's like Marcus opened a door, he explained to a gathering of veterans who'd come to learn about the program he'd started. And once it's open, anyone can walk through if they're willing. The program, Patriots and Paws, paired rescued dogs with veterans. But it was more than simple animal therapy. Using techniques Marcus had taught them, the veterans learned to truly communicate with their animals, to heal together rather than separately. The success rate was unprecedented. Veterans who'd been suicidal found purpose. Dogs who'd been deemed unadoptable became perfect companions. The VA took notice, then the Department of Defense. What had started as one boy saving puppies from a tree was becoming a nationwide movement. But with recognition came danger. The first threat came in a phone call, distorted voice, untraceable number. "Stop what you're doing, or the boy will disappear like the others." David wanted to go to the police, but Marcus stopped him. "They're scared," he said simply. "People who use animals for bad things. They know we can hear the animals now. They know the animals will tell us their secrets." He was right. Within weeks, major dog fighting rings were exposed when rescue dogs told Marcus and others like him about their experiences. Puppy mills were shut down. Animal testing facilities faced scrutiny when their test subjects' distress became undeniable. But the biggest revelation came from an unexpected source, a military working dog named Titan, who'd been retired after showing signs of severe trauma. Marcus met Titan at a military base where Tom had been invited to demonstrate their communication techniques. The moment Marcus touched the dog, he jerked back as if burned. "He's not traumatized from combat," Marcus said, his voice shaking. "He's traumatized from what he saw people do. American people, to prisoners." The room went silent. The base commander stepped forward, his face hard. "That's a serious accusation, son." Marcus met his gaze steadily. Titan saw soldiers hurt people who couldn't fight back. He tried to stop them, but they locked him up. That's why he won't work anymore. He doesn't trust anyone in uniform. The investigation that followed was quiet but thorough. 3 soldiers were court-martialed for prisoner abuse. Titan's handler, who'd reported the abuse and been ignored, was vindicated. And Marcus's gift, which had seemed so innocent, revealed its darker implications. Animals had been witnesses to humanity's crimes all along. Now, finally, they had a voice. The attempt on Marcus's life came on a cold December morning. He was walking Honor in the woods behind the house when she suddenly stopped, growling. A man emerged from the trees, tall, professional, carrying a tranquilizer gun. "Nothing personal, kid," he said, "but you're bad for business. Do you have any idea how much money you've cost certain people?" Before he could fire, Honor launched herself at him, but she was still recovering, still not at full strength. The man knocked her aside and aimed at Marcus. The forest erupted. Every dog within a mile began howling. Birds burst from the trees in massive flocks. Squirrels, rabbits, even deer emerged from hiding, surrounding the man in a living wall of creatures. And from the direction of Tom's house came Honor's puppies, Hope, Courage, and Faith, followed by Tom himself, running faster than a man with a prosthetic leg should be able to run. The would-be kidnapper found himself facing not just dogs, but an army of animals, all protecting the boy who could hear their hearts. "I'd run if I were you," Tom said, his voice deadly calm. "Because if you hurt that boy, there isn't a place on earth where animals won't find you. And trust me, they remember faces." The man ran. He was arrested 2 hours later when a flock of crows followed his car, making such a racket that police investigated. In his trunk, they found evidence linking him to an international exotic animal trafficking ring, one that Marcus's abilities threatened to expose. The incident changed everything. The FBI assigned protection to Marcus and his family. The media attention intensified, and Marcus himself seemed to grow older overnight, understanding finally that his gift came with a price. "I don't want anyone to get hurt because of me," he told his parents that night. "No one's going to hurt you," David promised, holding his son tight. "That's not what I mean," Marcus said. "I don't want the bad people to get hurt either. They're scared and angry, but hurting them won't make them better. We need to help them understand." This led to Marcus's most controversial decision. He asked to meet with Carl Brennan, the kidnapper he'd helped capture. The meeting took place in prison, with heavy security. Brennan sat shackled on one side of a reinforced glass partition, while Marcus sat on the other, Honor beside him. "Why?" Brennan asked immediately. "Why did you help them catch me?" "Because Lisa and James needed to go home," Marcus said simply. "But also because you needed to be stopped before you hurt yourself worse." Brennan laughed bitterly. "I'm in prison for life. How much worse can it get?" Marcus placed his small hand on the glass. "You could have jumped off that roof. You could have hurt Lisa. You could have become someone your kids couldn't love anymore. But you didn't. You stopped. That means there's still good in you." "My kids hate me." "No," Marcus said firmly. "They're hurt and confused, but they don't hate you. Emma still has the purple bear you gave her. Michael keeps your picture under his pillow." Brennan broke down crying. "How could you possibly know that?" Marcus smiled sadly. "Because love leaves marks on the world. On objects, on places, on hearts. I can see the marks. Your love for your kids is still out there, and their love for you is too. It's just tangled up with all the hurt." Over the next months, Marcus began visiting other prisoners, specifically those who'd committed crimes involving animals or children. It was controversial, dangerous, and many people thought his parents were insane to allow it. But something remarkable happened. The prisoners Marcus visited showed unprecedented rehabilitation rates. Some confessed to crimes they'd never been charged with. Others reached out to make amends with their victims. A few even developed their own ability to communicate with the therapy animals the prison had introduced. "He's not just hearing animals anymore," Dr. Crawford observed. "He's hearing the animal inside humans, the wounded, frightened, aggressive creature we all carry. And somehow, he's teaching it to trust again." The culmination came exactly 1 year after Marcus had found Honor's puppies in the tree. A conference was organized. Scientists, veterinarians, military personnel, law enforcement, and families from around the world who'd been touched by what the media had dubbed the Thompson effect. Marcus was supposed to give a speech, but when he stood at the podium, looking out at hundreds of faces, he simply said, "I can't tell you how to do what I do, but Honor can show you." He brought Honor on stage, along with her 3 puppies, now fully grown and each working in their specialized roles. Hope with Dr. Reeves, detecting illness. Courage with Tom, helping veterans. Faith with the sheriff's department, assisting in investigations. "A year ago, they were dying in a tree," Marcus said. "Everyone thought it was too late, but we listened and we helped, and look at them now. They're saving lives every day, not because they're special, though they are, but because someone heard them when they needed help." He paused, looking out at the audience. "Everything alive has a voice. Plants, animals, even the earth itself. We've just forgotten how to listen. But we can remember. We can learn again. It starts with being quiet. It starts with caring. It starts with believing that every cry matters." A hand raised in the audience. "But how do we know what's real communication and what's just our imagination?" Marcus thought for a moment. "You know the same way you know when someone loves you. You feel it. You can doubt it. You can question it. But deep down, you know. The animals have been trying to tell us things forever. We just finally started listening." Another question? "What about people who use this gift for bad things?" "They can't," Marcus said simply. "The gift only works with love. If you try to use it for harm, it goes away. The animals won't trust you anymore." As if to demonstrate, Honor walked into the audience, stopping at various people, touching them with her nose. Each person she touched later reported feeling something, a warmth, a connection, a sudden understanding of something they'd been struggling with. Dr. Crawford presented his findings. brain scans showing increased empathy centers, chemical markers indicating enhanced intuition, statistical evidence of the spreading phenomenon. But it was Tom who gave the most powerful testimony. "I came back from Afghanistan broken," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Not just my body, my soul. I'd lost faith in everything good. I wanted to die." He paused, looking at Marcus in honor. "This boy and this dog saved my life. Not just by finding those puppies, but by showing me that connection is still possible, that love still exists, that even someone as damaged as me could help heal others." He gestured to the section where his Patriots and Paws veterans sat with their dogs. "Every person here has a similar story. We were lost, and we were found. Not by being fixed, but by learning to fix others. The dogs we rescued ended up rescuing us. The conference ended with a demonstration. Marcus and several other children who developed the gift worked with a group of shelter dogs that were considered unadoptable, too aggressive, too fearful, too damaged. Within an hour, every dog was calm, trusting, and showing affection. Not through training or dominance, but through understanding. The children could feel what each dog needed: space, gentle touch, specific words, sometimes just silent companionship. "This is the future, Doctor," Crawford announced. "Not humans dominating animals or animals, serving humans, but true partnership, true communication, true understanding." But the most profound moment came after the official conference ended. Ellen had been sitting in the hotel garden, watching Marcus play with other gifted children and their animals. She was writing in her journal, documenting everything as she always did, when she felt a presence beside her. She looked up to find an elderly man wearing a veteran's cap from World War II. "You're Robert Hayes' daughter," he said. It wasn't a question. Ellen's heart stopped. "You knew my father?" The man nodded. "I was in his unit. I was there when he disappeared." He sat down beside her, his movements careful with age. "But he didn't die in that battle, ma'am." "Not exactly." "What do you mean?" The old veteran pulled out a faded photograph. It showed a group of soldiers with their military dogs. Ellen recognized her father immediately, standing with Guardian. "After the battle, we found bodies, but not Hayes's. We found Guardian, though, refusing to leave a particular spot in the forest. He stayed there for 3 days, howling constantly. When we finally dragged him away, we marked the spot, thinking we'd come back for Hayes's body." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "But when we came back after the war, we found something else. A whole pack of dogs, German shepherds, all of them, living in that spot. Wild, but not aggressive, protective of something. The locals said the dogs had been there since the battle, guarding something in the ruins of an old church." Ellen could barely breathe. "What were they guarding?" The veteran pulled out another photograph, this one more recent. It showed the ruins of a church with a small cemetery beside it. "We found a grave, ma'am. Unmarked, but carefully maintained. The dogs had been tending it, bringing flowers, keeping it clear of debris, and carved into a nearby tree were your father's initials and a message." He handed her a piece of paper with words copied from the carving. "Love transcends death. Service transcends species. The gift passes on. R.H." Ellen was crying now, clutching the paper. "He survived the battle? For a while, we think. Long enough to save those dogs, to train them to carry on his work. The locals told stories about an American soldier who could speak to animals, who helped them find food during the harsh winter after the battle. He died saving a child from a collapsed building," they said. "But the dogs never forgot." The veteran stood to leave, then turned back. "Your grandson has the same gift, doesn't he? I can see it in how the animals look at him." Ellen nodded, unable to speak. "Then Robert Hayes' mission continues," the old man said simply. "Through the boy, through the dogs, through all of us who've learned to listen. He'd be proud." As the veteran walked away, Marcus appeared at Ellen's side, Honor beside him. "You were talking about great-grandpa Robert." Ellen showed him the photographs, the message. Marcus studied them seriously, then smiled. "He says thank you for keeping his story alive, and he says the gift is stronger now because more people believe." "He says?" Ellen asked, though she was no longer surprised by anything Marcus claimed to know. Marcus pointed to Honor, whose eyes held that ancient wisdom she'd gained from Guardian. She carries all their memories, Guardian, Great-Grandpa Robert, all the dogs who've helped humans, and all the humans who've helped dogs. It's like a library of love, passed down through generations. That night, the Thompson family, Sarah, David, Marcus, and Ellen, sat together in their hotel room, processing everything that had happened in the past year, from finding 3 puppies in a tree to standing at the center of a global phenomenon. "Are you happy?" Sarah asked Marcus. "With all of this? The attention, the responsibility?" Marcus thought carefully. "I'm happy the puppies are safe. I'm happy Honor is healthy. I'm happy Tom isn't sad anymore. I'm happy the missing kids were found." He paused. "But sometimes I wish I could just be a regular kid." "You are a regular kid," David said firmly. "You just have an extraordinary gift." "Everyone has gifts," Marcus corrected. "Mine is just louder." As if in agreement, Honor barked once, then settled at Marcus's feet. Through the window, they could see the moon rising, the same moon that had witnessed Robert Hayes saving dogs in a war-torn forest, that had watched over Guardian's decades of waiting, that now shone on a new generation of gifted children and animals finding each other. "What happens next?" Ellen asked. Marcus closed his eyes, his hand resting on Honor's head. "More children will discover they can hear. More animals will find their voices. And someday, maybe not soon, but someday, everyone will remember how to listen." "To animals?" Sarah asked. "To everything," Marcus said. "To the earth when it's hurting. To the trees when they're dying. To the ocean when it's sick. The animals are just the beginning. They're teaching us to listen again so we can hear everything that needs help." It was a profound statement from a 5-year-old, but no one questioned it anymore. Marcus had proven time and again that wisdom didn't always come with age. The next morning, as they prepared to return home, Marcus made one last request. He wanted to visit the hollow oak tree where everything had begun. They found the tree unchanged, its hollow now covered with a metal grate to prevent other animals from becoming trapped, but someone had placed a small plaque at its base. Here, on October 15th, 3 puppies were saved by a boy who could hear their cries. May we all learn to listen with such open hearts. Marcus knelt beside the tree, Honor and her 3 grown puppies surrounding him. He placed his hand on the ancient bark and closed his eyes. "Thank you," he whispered, "for keeping them safe until I could find them. For being their shelter. For calling us here." The tree, of course, didn't answer. Trees don't talk, even to boys with gifts. But the wind through its leaves sounded like a whisper, and for just a moment, everyone present could have sworn they heard it too. A voice as old as the forest itself, saying, "You're welcome. And thank you for listening." As they walked back through the forest, Marcus holding his mother's hand, Honor walking beside them, her puppies ranging ahead, Ellen couldn't help but think about the threads connecting everything. Her father to Marcus, Guardian to Honor, the puppies in 1943 to the puppies now, the gift passed down through generations, waiting for the right moment to emerge. "Do you think it will really spread?" she asked Marcus. "This ability to hear animals?" Marcus looked up at her with those wise, innocent eyes. "It already has, Grandma. Every time someone adopts a shelter dog instead of buying one, every time someone stops to help an injured bird, every time a kid stands up to someone hurting an animal, they're listening, even if they don't know it." He paused, watching hope nose through the underbrush, courage chase a butterfly, faith alert to every sound. "The puppies in the tree weren't just waiting to be saved," he said. "They were waiting to save us, to remind us that every cry matters, every life has value, every connection is sacred." 6 months later, the Thompson family had settled into a new normal. The media attention had died down, though requests for Marcus's help still came regularly. They'd established boundaries, no more than 2 cases a month, nothing that required extensive travel, and always with proper support from law enforcement or medical professionals. Marcus had started 1st grade, where he was just another kid learning to read and write. His teacher, Mrs. Foster, noted only that he had an unusual calming effect on the class hamster, but the ripples of his gift continued to spread. Tom's Patriots and Paws program had gone national, with chapters in 15 states. The success rate for veteran suicide prevention in the program was unprecedented. Not a single participant had been lost. Dr. Reeves had opened a special clinic for animals with trauma, using techniques learned from observing Marcus and Honor. Her recovery rates defied traditional veterinary medicine. The FBI had quietly established a unit dedicated to cases involving what they carefully termed enhanced human-animal communication. They'd solved 17 missing person cases using gifted children and their animal partners. And around the world, more children were discovering they could hear what animals were feeling. Not all as clearly as Marcus, but enough to make a difference, enough to save lives, enough to change the relationship between humans and animals forever. One evening, as the family sat on their porch watching the sunset, a stranger approached. She was young, maybe 20, holding a small mixed-breed dog. "Are you Marcus?" she asked hesitantly. Marcus nodded, already sensing why she'd come. "This is Buddy," she said, indicating the dog. "He belonged to my brother. My brother died last week. Overdose. Buddy won't eat, won't play, just lies by the door, waiting for him to come home. The vet says he's dying of grief. I heard about what you can do. Can you help him understand?" Marcus looked at the little dog, whose eyes were dull with sorrow. He knelt down, holding out his hand. Buddy sniffed it, but didn't move otherwise. For a long moment, Marcus was silent. Then he began to speak, not to the young woman, but to Buddy. "He loved you so much," Marcus said softly. "He called you his best friend. He's sorry he had to leave. He didn't want to. The sick feeling in his head was too strong, and he couldn't fight it anymore." Buddy's ears perked up slightly. "But the love doesn't go away when someone dies," Marcus continued. "It stays in you, in all the happy memories, in all the times he threw your ball, in all the nights you slept beside him. He wants you to keep living, to find new people to love, to be happy. Because when you're happy, a part of him is happy too." Buddy stood up slowly, tail beginning to wag tentatively. He walked to the young woman and licked her hand, the first affection he'd shown since her brother's death. "How?" she asked through tears. "How do you know what to say?" Marcus looked at Honor, who was watching from the porch. "Because every loss is the same and every loss is different. The words change, but the love underneath is always the same. Animals understand love better than we do. Sometimes they just need help remembering that love is stronger than loss." The young woman left with Buddy, who was already showing signs of recovery. As their car disappeared down the road, Sarah put her arm around Marcus. "You did a good thing," she said. "It's what I'm supposed to do," Marcus replied. "It's why I can hear them. Not just to save them, but to help them save us." David, ever the pragmatist, asked, "But what happens when you grow up? Will you still have this gift?" Marcus considered this. Great-grandpa Robert had it his whole life, but it changes as you get older. You hear different things, understand different needs. Right now, I hear fear and pain and love. When I'm older, maybe I'll hear other things. "Like what?" Ellen asked. Marcus looked out at the darkening forest, where fireflies were beginning to dance. "Like how to heal the whole world, not just one animal at a time. Like how to teach everyone to listen. Like how to make sure no puppy ever cries alone in a tree again." It was an ambitious goal for a 6-year-old, but then again, Marcus had already achieved the impossible multiple times over. As night fell and the family went inside, Anna remained on the porch, her puppies, no longer puppies but full-grown dogs with their own gifts, arranged around her. She looked toward the forest, toward the hollow oak, toward the place where Guardian had waited. "So long." A howl rose from her throat, not sad, not lonely, but triumphant. A sound that said, "We are here, we are listening, we are ready." From the forest, an answer came, not from living dogs, but from something else. The echo of all the animals that had been saved, all the connections that had been made, all the love that had been shared between species. Marcus, lying in his bed, heard it too. He smiled, knowing that his work, his gift, was just beginning. Tomorrow, there would be new animals to help, new people to heal, new connections to forge. But tonight, he was just a little boy who had saved 3 puppies from a tree, and in doing so, had begun to save the world. The story could end here, with hope and healing, and the promise of a better tomorrow. But there was one more moment, one more connection that needed to be made. A month later, on a cold November morning, Sophie Reyes, the girl from the dog fighting ring, came to visit with her mother. Hope, the puppy she'd tried to save, now healthy and strong, bounded out to greet her. Sophie and Marcus sat in the backyard, surrounded by dogs, not speaking at first. Then Sophie asked, "Does it hurt?" Hearing all their pain, Marcus nodded. Sometimes, but not hearing it would hurt more, because then they'd be alone with it. Sophie pulled out a notebook, showing Marcus drawings she'd made, detailed, beautiful pictures of the dogs from the fighting ring, but shown as they should have been, happy, playing, free. "I can't hear them like you can," she said, "but I remember them. Every single one." Marcus studied the drawings, then looked at Sophie with sudden understanding. "You have a gift too. You don't hear them, you see them. You see who they really are underneath the hurt." Sophie's eyes widened. "Is that a gift?" "Everything that helps animals is a gift," Marcus said firmly. "We need people who can hear, people who can see, people who can heal, people who can protect. We need everyone." That afternoon, Sophie and Marcus worked together for the first time, Marcus listening to what the rescue dogs needed, Sophie drawing them as they could be, showing potential adopters not damaged animals, but future family members. Every drawing found its match. Every dog found a home. As Sophie and her mother prepared to leave, hope clearly torn between her old friend and her new life, Marcus had an idea. "She can visit," he told Sophie. "Hope loves you, but she also loves her new family. She can have both. Love isn't something that runs out." Sophie hugged Hope goodbye, promising to visit soon. As their car drove away, Hope settled beside Marcus, content in the knowledge that love multiplied rather than divided. Ellen, who had watched the entire interaction, wrote in her journal, "The gift spreads not like a disease, but like dawn, slowly, gently, illuminating what was always there but hidden in darkness. Each child who discovers they can communicate with animals teaches others. Each animal that finds its voice encourages others to speak. Each connection made strengthens all connections. My father saved 3 puppies in 1943. My grandson saved 3 puppies today. Someday, another child will save 3 more. And each time, the world becomes a little more whole, a little more healed, a little more connected. This is how we save the world, not with grand gestures or dramatic rescues, but with small acts of listening, of caring, of refusing to let any cry go unheard. The puppies in the tree were never just puppies. They were a test, a call, a reminder. They were asking, "Will you listen? Will you help? Will you love?" And Marcus answered, "Yes, yes, yes," as will the next child, and the next, until someday, maybe not in my lifetime, but someday, every cry will be heard, every pain will be shared, every love will be multiplied. This is the legacy of the gift. This is the promise of the puppies in the tree. This is how we heal the world. One rescue, one connection, one moment of perfect understanding at a time. As Ellen closed her journal, Marcus appeared beside her, honor at his side, as always. "Grandma," he said, "I had another dream. About great-grandpa Robert." Ellen's breath caught. What did he say? Marcus smiled, that wise, innocent smile that had started everything. He said the gift isn't really ours. It belongs to everyone, every person, every animal, every living thing. We're just the ones who remember it first. But everyone will remember eventually. "When?" Ellen asked. Marcus looked out at the forest, toward the hollow oak, toward the future spreading before them like an infinite possibility. "When the world needs it most," he said simply. "And that time is now." Honor barked once in agreement, and somewhere in the distance, carried on the wind, came the sound of puppies playing, not crying, not afraid, but joyful. The sound of rescue becoming redemption, of pain becoming purpose, of a little boy's simple act of kindness rippling out to change the world. The beginning disguised as an ending, the gift passing on, the puppies in the tree, saved and saving in return, forever and ever, world without end. If this story touched your heart, if you felt the connection between Marcus and the animals, if you believe in the power of listening and compassion, please like this video and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible true stories that will restore your faith in humanity and the amazing bonds we share with animals. And don't forget to comment below. Have you ever experienced an unexplainable connection with an animal? We'd love to hear your story. Together, we can spread the message that every cry matters, every life has value, and everyone has the power to make a difference. Like, share, subscribe, and let's continue spreading hope, one story at a time.